Kedoshim tiu kekodesh ani Hashem Elokeichem. Dorshi Chazal yochel kamoini, Talmid loimer ani Hashem. Kedishosi lemala mikdushaschem. V'hine ze tamua, eich yal al das shum odom li'is kodesh kashem. So the pasuk is making a statement. You should be holy because I'm holy. That's what Hashem is saying. So Chazal are saying, in a little bit of a different setting, you should be holy, but a limited kind of holy. Can't be unlimited holy like I am. There's a deeper level of holiness that only I contain. So he's going to get into this a little bit, and maybe we'll see a couple of different ways of reading this pasuk. Ach ermez ma'ad b'musar haskel. Ki gule v'yadua ki kodesh nikra chochma. Holiness is wisdom. Because when a person lives in accordance with the wisdom of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created life, then he is considered to be holy. It means that he's separated from all the koiches atuma. And the koiches atuma, they represent the power of illusion, the power of the imagination, the power of the dimyon, to represent realities to us that are not real, but we assume that they are. And that causes a deterioration of our condition as human beings, as divine beings, and we get involved in things that are not divine because the divine is real. So when we are connected to reality through Chokhmah, we're connected to Kedusha and we are Kedoshim. But when we deteriorate into the worlds of illusion, the Memte Share Tuma, then we lose our connection to wisdom, we lose our connection to the divine, and we fall into places that are fictitious, that our mind presents to us as real, but is not. And the strongest place, the deepest place where the mind creates illusion is in the identity of self. Because that place is hidden from our senses. So the Chushim, the Dimyon has 5 servants, which are the 5 senses, the five different avenues through which our mind receives data about life, which is vision, and sound, and smell, and taste, and touch, and feeling. Through these senses, the mind receives all the different images and all the different types of information that it can receive, and through that it creates an image of what it believes to be real, what it believes to be true. The problem is that the self is not visible to the senses. Only the body is visible to the senses. The self, the real self, the ani, is hidden behind the senses. It's the one that's observing the senses. And when the mind, when the imagination takes care of our reality without considering the self, without considering what it cannot perceive through the senses, then it creates an illusion of a reality that doesn't exist. Because the real self is the only reality. It's using 5 senses in order to sustain itself, in order to interact with the world, but it cannot be defined through the 5 senses. Any attempt to define the self through anything that relates to the 5 senses will cause a person to descend into the worlds of illusion, to the worlds of Tumah. And therefore, Kodesh is called Chokhmah. Kodesh means that a person has recognized the truth, that his true essence is beyond the senses. It's just, the senses are just tools for the self in order to be able to interact and also to be able to create begodim, malbushim for the self. So the ani can be dressed in many different malbushim, and the senses can be used to dress up the ani in many different levushim. But always, the real self needs to be at the center of the interaction that a person has with the world. And the Baal Shem Tov speaks about this a lot. And that a person, even when he's learning Torah, he needs to take a moment every now and again to remember who he is and who he's learning for. Because otherwise the information in the Torah can also deteriorate into an experience that only relates to the senses. And when somebody learns Torah and the only things that are involved in his learning are the senses, that Torah is not real Torah. That Torah doesn't enter the faculty of the ani, of the true essence, which the Torah is here to raise and the Torah is here to guide. So, K'mo she'amri Kodesh Yisrael Hashem Reishis Teviyosei, that Klal Yisrael is considered Kodesh. V'targum shel Bereishis, b'chochmase, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with Chochma, Nimtza, Reishis Nikra Chochma. Iksiv Kodesh Yisrael Hashem Reishis, Kodesh Yisrael Hashem Reishis Teviyosei, Nimtza Kodesh Bechinas Chochma. Kodesh and Chochma relate to each other, meaning Chochma is wisdom, and a person that lives according to this wisdom is called a Kodesh. V'chochma yichayis, Chochma is life itself. Chochma will give life to the one who owns it. How does Chochma give life to the one who owns it? By allowing him to recognize who he really is. And through that recognition, he becomes alive. As long as he thought that he is anything related to his senses, he wasn't really alive, he was dead, because the real self wasn't interacting with life. The real self was invisible and unconscious. But when a person starts gaining access to Chochma, then he suddenly becomes alive, because the self that everything is supposed to serve suddenly became conscious and aware of who it is and what it's trying to accomplish in this world. V'kitchav richi bara olam b'chochma k'mo she'omri kilam b'chochma asivsa. The pasuk says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made everything with Chochma. Chochma is the tool of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to manifest life into this world. The Chochma, through recognizing the different avenues of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu manifested life, so a person could connect to the one who created life, to the Baal Chochma, to the one who owns the Chochma, which is only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. None of us own Chochma. We use Chochma. We have Chochma from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we can use in order to interact with life, but we can't own Chochma, because our very existence is created through Chochma. So Chochma comes before us. We're under Chochma, not over Chochma. The Baal Chochma, the ultimate Baal Chochma, is the creator that manifested all these realities. So just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this world through wisdom, so too a person's life needs to be created through wisdom. So he should only manifest things, he should only bring out into his machshava dibre maise things that are worked out through chokhmah, through wisdom, meaning that he identifies the purpose of what he's trying to accomplish by what he's doing, and then he does it purposefully. He does it in order to gain access to that experience willfully and consciously, and not that the imagination is manifesting machshava dibre maise on its own, without any chokhmah, without ever recognizing a purpose of why it's being done. It's just running on fumes, on previous experience. The person is not present, and the imagination is simply manifesting because it manifested yesterday and the day before. That type of action it could cause a lot of damage. That's not called kedusha. So when a person wants to be doimet HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wants lidamas lekoineri, he has to do lasses kol masav b'chokhmah v'chayis, sheyi masav chaim k'mosh asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu's masim are alive and they're divine, at kedei kach that we are his masim, and his masim can continue living on their, so to speak, on their own. They have their own bechira, they have their own ability to manifest further. That's because they were created b'chokhmah. So too, a person should create everything that he creates with chokhmah so that it has life, so that it has continuance. And the Baal Shem Tov says about this also, that a person, if he wants to know if the Torah that he's learning is true, is related to reality, is related to the divine Torah, he should see if the Torah that he's learning is pora v'rova, if it has a life of its own. Because everything that is real, everything that is created with chokhmah, has its own existence. And therefore, when a person hears a Dvar Torah that is real, that is true, that Dvar Torah will start interacting with other Divrei Torah that he has in his mind, and other ideas and other realities. It will have a life of its own. It will start transforming the individual from within, because it's alive. Masha'en Ken Torah that's strictly related to the imagination is dead. It just has whatever was given, and it doesn't add any value. It doesn't continue as an alive entity. And he refers that to, the Baal Shem Tov refers that to David HaMelech, that it says that he learned Shnei Devarim from Achitophel, and therefore he called him Mori V'Rabbi. So the Baal Shem Tov says he learned from Achitophel only two things. And the two things that he learned, they stayed just two things. They never interacted with anything else in order to be Puravarov, in order to continue to propagate in his mind. And that's how he knew that the Torah is low-level Torah. It's Torah that's related to the imagination. And like we know that Chazal teach us that Achitoffel's Torah, even though he was extremely wise, Ad Kedei Kach, that Atzas Achitophel was considered to be like the Eitz of the Urim V'Tumim. And we see by Achitophel himself that he was so certain with his Chochmah that when he saw that David HaMelech wasn't listening to his advice, he didn't even wait for the story to play out. He went home and he hung himself, which proves that he was so certain that he understands how life works and how these realities are going to play out, that he didn't have to wait for it to actually happen in order for him to recognize that he's lost. He already saw, based on what's playing out, that things are not going to go his way, and he had no purpose continuing to live. But nevertheless, Chazal teach us that the Torah of Achitophel was min hasofa v'lachitz, from the lips going out. And like we mentioned before, anything that's external, anything that's related to the senses, which is min hasofa v'lachitz, that happens outside of the person, is not real. So he understood very deeply, his imagination was very developed. But the ani, which lives min hasofa v'lifnim, lives inside of you, the one that's speaking out, that he didn't connect to. That reality he didn't have access to, and therefore he wasn't a Kaddish. Therefore he was disconnected from Kedusha, and that was caused to him because he was from the Baalei Lashon Hara. Like we know the Doeg v'Achitophel were from the Baalei Lashon Hara that were trying to bring down David HaMelech. And a person that suffers from a tongue that speaks Lashon Hara, it right away shows that he doesn't recognize the ani that's inside of him. Why is that? Because the ani that's inside of us, the ani that's inside of me, is also inside of you. So if I speak badly about any other Yid, it means that I haven't identified the ani that lives inside of me. If I would have identified him appropriately, I would have recognized that the person I'm speaking badly about is me. He simply manifested his character the way his ani was set up by him, and I manifested that ani in a different way, but it's the same ani. And the only way this ani is going to have peace is when all the anis in all of us unite into one ani and we find peace together. Because it's one entity, it's one unit. Spiritually, it's all one. It's one spirit. Just like a person cannot have peace as long as any of his body parts are in pain, so too, Klal Yisrael cannot find peace as long as every single Yid, every single one of us, is not involved in the Yichud, so that the Ani is identified correctly. So it says, Ach lif'amam yochel adam litos ki chachmos hayam deloi. Ve'ein tzorich l'siyam min hashamayim. A person can make the mistake and think that my wisdom, it's me. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave me an excellent brain, and I know how to use it better than other people, and therefore, everything that I get is my koyach. Koichi v'yotzim yodi. V'azeh rakosev al tomer koichi v'yotzim yodi. Don't say that it's your koyach. So it says, which koyach are we talking about here when we say koichi v'yotzim yodi? We're not talking about muscle. We're talking about the koyach of chokhmah. Ki koichi chokhmah ois is koyach ma. Chokhmah is the koyach ma. What is koyach ma? The koyach ma is gematria Adam. What is Adam? Potential. So chokhmah is the koyach to manifest potential into reality. The better a person knows how to manifest potential into reality, the more wisdom he has, the more chokhmah he has. And the less a person knows about how to manifest, and all his manifestations are constantly confused and combobulated, and they don't come out the way that he intends them to, that shows that he is lacking chokhmah, that he is not really aligned with the truth, that he doesn't have the kedusha, he doesn't have the objectivity to recognize what is real and what is not real. And therefore, the real and the unreal, they mix as he manifests, and since the unreal doesn't have life, the manifestations cannot come out fully the way that he intends them to. So therefore, he says, Itchivosa b'tzidei, the Pasuk answers this person, don't say koichi v'yotzim yodi. Why? Ki hu anoisen l'cha koyach lasos choel. He's the one that's giving you the koyach. He's the one that's giving you the koyach ma. That's his koyach, it's not your koyach. V'tagima harei he hu yoiv l'cha eitza l'mikna nichsin. He's giving you the eitza. He's giving you the ability to identify the opportunities in order to manifest them. Ki b'emes HaKadosh Baruch Hu koyach koichoi, v'chochmas chochmosoi, וכמאמר אליהו זכר הטוב, וכאן אנטס תלק מנאי, ישתארי קילן כשמוסים kegife belo nishmose, that they all stay like a body without a soul, meaning that every koyach in the world contains with it the koyach of the Creator, the koyach of the Havaya. And as soon as the koyach of the Havaya leaves it, then it's dead, then it's just an imagined being. It doesn't have life. It doesn't have the Ruach Chaim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu instills within each one of us. Like it says, Vayipar ba'apav nishmas chaim man denofach mitoiche nofach, that that's a divine force that's giving us life, that's animating us. And therefore, a person needs to recognize that his chachma is simply a manifestation of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created life. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu created life in such a way, He created our bodies in such a way, He created our brains and our blood in such a way that it has the ability to project consciousness. And not only can it project consciousness, but it projects an intelligent consciousness. And this is beyond the ability of the imagination to be Metzayer. How could it be that within a physical body, within a physical being, within blood, there can be an intelligence that's not simply conscious and acts, but it's conscious enough to identify what is right and what is wrong. It's conscious enough to identify the results of its actions. And that's within a physical body, within a physical being, within the physical blood, we have the ability to think, and not simply think, but think in a way that is extremely complex. If we just look at our minds, and we recognize that our minds are a combination of a tremendous amount of information. If we wanted to print all the information in our mind, which is impossible because each image in our mind is so complex that it would take an eternity to explain it, and we can't even give it over. Like Chazal say, live with the incha, the heart of a man is a man, you can't write it down, you can't give it over. Nevertheless, our mind records for every second, it records that experience that includes all the five senses. And it does that for years and years and years on end. So if you wanted to put that in a library, you would have a building that goes up thousands of floors, and it would have an unlimited amount of books in it trying to describe the realities that are contained in one single human mind. And yet, when you want to think of last year Pesach, instantly your mind spits it up. So the librarian just went through thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of possible data that you want to dig up, and in 1 second, just by intention, without even giving a specific description of what you're looking for, it appears in your mind in full detail as if it just happened yesterday. And all that happens through blood. That's the koyach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chachma, that it can create a chachma like that it can create a device, a machine, that is so fluent, it's so seamless, that a person can use it for his entire life and never even notice that he has it, never even notice the tremendous treasure that's laying right inside of his body. That is way beyond any type of technology we can even imagine. No computer, no AI system, nothing that we can possibly imagine can do what a human brain does, and all that comes from a tipa zera that is not even visible to the naked eye. That's the chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore the pasuk says, don't say koichi v'otzim yodi. That koyach that you have is not, you couldn't have designed your wisdom. You couldn't have designed your ability to think. So therefore, when you think good, when you have wisdom, when you realize that, wow, look at this powerful machine, look at this powerful piece of equipment that is under my control, don't take the credit for it. Recognize the one that made it be. Recognize the one that brought all that out of ayin, out of nothingness, out of a tiny dot of sperm. That's the koyach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then we can use that machine, we can use that ability, we can use those capabilities that HaKadosh Baruch Hu ingrained within our being so seamlessly for many different directions. And unfortunately, many times it's used to fight the very one that created it. How do we fight the very one that created it? By fighting with other people. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the life of the world. He's the Chai HaChaim. So anybody in this world, anybody that's manifested in this reality represents him, because a person is more HaKadosh Baruch Hu than he is himself. The person doesn't know himself. A person is just the consciousness of the self. But the real self is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's. So when a person is in conflict with other people, he's in conflict with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he's using this tremendous koyach, he's using this tremendous machine, this capability, this sophisticated system that's beyond our comprehension that he received for free, and he's using it kiviyachol to go against the very one that made it. And that's obviously the opposite of Chochmah. That's the opposite of Kedusha. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu leaves anything, whether it's a malach or a person or an animal or a concept or a thing, or all the different stars and planets which all represent different chokhmas and different abilities of perception and consciousness, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu leaves, then there's nothing left, because he's the life force within everything. He's the only one that's ever alive. Our identifying that reality and identifying who we really are, identifying the Ani and how that belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that makes us alive. And when we lose that contact, that makes us dead. Because then we're just an idea, we're just a thought, we're just an imagined being, we're not the real thing. V'zeh Shem Ramaz HaPosik, Kedoshim tiyu, perish, chachomim tiyu. Be smart. V'chaim, be alive. Sheyechai legabe chai. So that you will be alive next to the one who is alive in you, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it says, Yochel kamoini, perish, v'im tertzeloimer, shatem chachomim b'chochmaschem, v'chochma shalochem, k'mo shamanu, koichi voitzem yodi. If you think that you can be like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, oh, I'm a chochem, I'm a big chochem, look at me, he created me so perfect, I can be as smart as he is. It says, you think that you don't need anybody in order to use your chachma. You can use your own devices, you can use your own force, you can use your own wisdom and understanding in order to manifest whatever you want. You have no power without HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Your chachma, the first manifestation of your chachma is the recognition of who gave it to you and who made it be that way. As soon as you lose touch with that, then you've lost touch with any chachma. Anything you do after that is the equivalent of an animal acting out. It's not the real you. Because the real you only comes into action when you recognize who you are. Who are you? You're an extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chachma. HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'roiv chachmasai created a sophisticated chacham inside of you. And that's the truth, that's the real you. But if you think that chokhmah, that koyach is yours, separate of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, separate of the rest of reality, as if you exist on an island, then you've separated yourself from your chokhmah. Now you've gone into choshech, you've gone into the imagination, into tumah. So therefore, baladai chokhmah yizbarach, if somebody tries to imagine something without the chokhmah HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's no movement at all. Rak kedushaschem yeh merkova sheyeh kedushasi tomid lamala v'chofefes al kedushaschem v'amaskel yovin. Meaning, your kedusha is absorbing my kedusha. That's what it means to be a kodesh. By recognizing this wisdom that you are part of him, and he's the one that's giving you the ability to be, and he's the one that's giving you the ability to manifest whatever it is you're manifesting, that makes you a Kaddish. And as soon as we move away from there, we lose our Kedusha, we lose our Chochmah, we lose our connection. Now he's going to go in a different direction. Oy dir moiz bezeh, yochel kamoini, haina, kol odom yochel liyas Kaddish k'mo Hashem baruch kav'yochel. So he's saying, every person can be as holy as HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kaneshama, hi chelek elekay mimal. So now he's going in the other direction, saying, Yochel kamoini, meaning, maybe you can be like me. Why? Because you have a chelek elekay mimal. So mitzad your chelek elekay mimal, you and him are the same thing. You're indistinguishable. V'yochel liyas hachelek kechuloi, shezeh atachlis hagomer. Meaning, at the end of the day, we're going to recognize that there's really no separation between us and him. Like the pasuk says, "V'navi b'neichem yivneisechem," that even little children will be neviim when Mashiach comes. And a navi means somebody who has identified his essence as the divine essence, somebody who has recognized the true nature of himself. And therefore, the time will come when we and him will be indistinguishable. Minolan zeh, Talmud Leimer Ani Hashem. So it says, Ani is Hashem, Kedushosi lamalo, Haine ma, Shekdushosi nis'ala lamala, Hirak mikdushaschem. Kivyochel is taking it all the way, he's doing a 180 over here. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Kedusha only comes from Klal Yisrael. Without Klal Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have Kedusha Kivyochel. How can we say that? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is only Bekoyach. As far as we're concerned, words don't apply to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? You can't apply any words to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ad kedei kach, like they say, the ilas ilois, you can't even be toifisim in the kutzah shel yud. Not only the Shem Yitkai Vovkai doesn't speak about the ilas ilois, but even the kutzah shel yud, which is Remes and the Keser Elyon, which is the highest place where we can Kivyochel give some type of form, even though there's no form there, but we call it kutzah shel yud, Kivyochel, there's some connection to the Chochmah that manifests to the one, to the Bala Chochmah. But even there, you're not touching the ilas ilois, you're not touching the one that made all this manifest. So the words do not apply to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So how can we say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Kodesh? Kodesh is a word. So when we say that he's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're referring to a certain type of manifestation into this reality. That's the only way we can call him HaKadosh Baruch Hu, otherwise words would not apply. So how can we apply these words to him? Only when Klal Yisrael is Bigdusha. Then we can identify HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Kedusha. Otherwise his Kedusha is hidden. And therefore in the world of words, where we live, where we're trying to identify HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the world of words, we wouldn't be able to say that he's a Kodesh. So he's learning in Pshat and Chazal. Kedushosi lamala, how am I so holy up there? Mikdushaschem, it comes from your Kedusha. You're the ones who are giving me Kedusha. You're the ones who are manifesting my Chochmah so that people can recognize that I'm a Chochem. Shekevyochel Yisrael b'maaseim hatoivim noisnim koyach ikdusha b'pamalya shel malo. They're the ones who are bringing power to the one above, like the pasuk says, Tenu oiz le'lekim. Give power to the divine nature. Give power to reality. Give power to the force that creates. And that's done by us. Because if we don't allow the koiches of Kedusha to manifest in this world, like many generations who ran in many different directions but not towards the truth, then all kinds of craziness can happen on this planet. And then, Kevyochel, the Kedusha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not visible, the Chochmah is not visible. It seems to the simple eye that this world is just a random, chaotic place that has no meaning and has no sense. V'hu she'amar ha'posek, Ani Hashem, haine masha Ani Hashem, Yimachmas elekechem, she'elekechem elekai Yisrael. Kevyochel, Ani Hashem elekechem. How can I be Hashem? Because I'm your God, I'm your force, I'm your power. By me being your power and you identifying with it, then I'm Hashem. Then I'm HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But when you lose connection to that, then I'm not. Then I don't have a manifestation in this world. I don't have a place in this world. So there's deep depth in this statement. So when we look at the word Ani, so we know the Ani is always remes to the Shechina. The Shechina Akdosh is called Ani. And the Shechina Akdosh has many different names. The Ani, the name of Ani, when we speak about the Shechina, it means that the identity of self within humanity, the ability of a human being to contemplate himself as a self, as an entity, as a being, as something that is, something that exists, something that can manifest, that's something that you don't find anywhere else in the animal kingdom. So in all the creations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you don't find that there's somebody or something that can identify itself as an Ani, that can recognize its experience the way that a human being can recognize its own experience. Therefore, that Ani, that self-identification, that is the Shechina. So Nisav HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have a Shechina b'tachtonim. What does that mean? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to have within the tachtonim a creature that can identify himself as who he is. And that's why he created man. There's a beautiful gematria. The word Migdash Melech is begematria Leiv Basar. When is a person a Migdash Melech? When he has a Leiv Basar, when he removes the Leiv Even, when Maltem es Olas Levavchem, right? Kadosh Baruch Hu, like it says that in the future, V'nesati lechem Leiv Basar, V'novi b'nechem v'masechem. It's exactly the pasuk that we're referring to. That the Leiv Basar makes a human being a Migdash Melech. Why is it now Migdash Melech? Because his Ani is identified appropriately. Who am I? Who is the I? I'm the sophisticated creature that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in order to recognize him. And therefore, this is the Migdash. V'osi le'migdash v'shechanti b'soicham, says the Ramban, this was only necessary after the Egel. Before the Egel, the Migdash was the human being. There didn't need to be an external representation of the Migdash. The Migdash was a spiritual thing, that a human being is a Migdash. Because within him, he can identify the one that makes, the one that creates, the one that has this infinite wisdom. And therefore, the Ani represents the Shechina Keviyochel. And this Ani, this identity of self, we all have that. We all have that together. Like it says, Kol Yisrael, Arevim Zelazeh, that we're Arevim and Mirovim Yachad. We're one thing, we're one Ani, we're one identity, we're one being. And this being has many different parts, it has many different manifestations, but at the core it's the same being. And this is what the pasuk means when we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So he's saying Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem, our force, our divine nature. Because Elokim always means divine nature. And we see in the Torah many different times when Moshe Rabbeinu speaks about different representations of the word Elokim, where you can say Elokecho, or Elokechem, or Elokeinu, and it's not the same. It's not the same. Each time it's referring to the same divine entity, but it's referring to it from a different context, from a different perspective. Because when Moshe Rabbeinu is talking about Elokecho, he's talking about the divine nature, the force, the Baal HaKoiches, that's giving you life. When he's talking Elokeinu, he's including himself also. It includes the one that's giving him life. So the Zohar says that the pasuk, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem Elokecho eish achlahu, that Hashem, your divine nature, is a fire that eats. So the Zohar says, Moshe Rabbeinu is saying that the Klal Yisrael, he's saying very specific, your nature is the nature of the fire that eats. My nature is not the nature of the fire that eats. Moshe Rabbeinu transcended that divine nature to a divine nature that doesn't eat, the divine nature of Chesed. Like we can see on a fire when it's on the psula. So the fire that's closest to the psula is like a blue fire. And that blue fire is the one that actually drinks the oil or drinks the wax. That's the one that's mechale. That's the one that eats. That's the one that's burning whatever is underneath it. But beyond that, there's the orange and the white fire. They don't eat. They only come wherever there's a blue fire to rest on it. So if there's no blue fire, there's no orange fire and there's no white fire. But the blue fire is the only one that's eating. So Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to Klal Yisrael, you are still in the blue fire. Hashem Elokecho eish achla. But me, I'm in the white fire. My Elokai doesn't eat no more. My Elokai leaves me be. Adrabi, he gives me power. He doesn't eat me. So the Hashem Elokeinu, when we say as the power, the force that gives Klal Yisrael chayes, the force that lives inside of us, the Ani that's inside of every one of us, Hashem Echad is just one. It's the same one. In me, he is me. In you, he is you. In him, he is him. And it's the same one. It's just a different manifestation of the exact same being. Spiritually, it's the exact same. And therefore, only when Klal Yisrael comes together as one, are we Kedoshim, do we recognize the real truth of our nature. And we can transcend, and we can become spiritual. And how can we do that? So another name for the Shechina is Tzedek. So David HaMelech says, Pischu li share tzedek ovoivam oideka. What is tzedek? Tzedek is the conscience. Every human being, as part of the settings of this magnificent being, of this magnificent spirit that lives in our blood, not only can it distinguish between what's true and what's not true, and not only can it distinguish between all the different thoughts and ideas and concepts that reside within it, but it also has the ability to tell good and bad, to tell what's right and what's wrong. And that's called the human conscience. Now, when a person is not straight with their conscience, they can never transcend spiritually, because they don't have access to real Kedusha. They're not really within themselves. Because the Ani, the self that we identify as self, is just a doorway to get into the spiritual world, to get to the spiritual dimensions, to the spiritual realities. So when a person wants to go beyond the Ani, he wants to transcend and see what creates his Ani, what's behind it, what's really within all of us, what's our true spiritual essence, what's our true spiritual nature. He has to be able to go through the doors of tzedek. Pischu li sharei tzedek, open up the doors of tzedek. How can you get so close to tzedek? When your conscience is clean. When a person lives in according with his conscience, when a person lives according with his spiritual compass of what he knows is right, then he can get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like the next pasuk says, Zeh hashar lashem tzadikim yevoi yevoi. What does it mean to be a tzaddik? A tzaddik means that you add a yud, which is a seichel, within tzedek. So when a person lives, when the seichel lives in accordance with his conscience, then he's called a tzaddik. But the conscience can also be distorted. So when we learn Torah, we're uploading to our conscience. Everything that we learn goes into our conscience. And then if we want to do something that is against what we've learned, even if we've learned a tremendous amount, we've been through thousands and thousands and thousands of words and different text, the moment we want to transgress, we want to go something that's against something we've learned, our conscience will spit out something to us and say, you learned it, you're not supposed to do this. And then when a person transgresses that, even though he truly believes that the right way is otherwise, he loses access to his Ani. He loses access to his self. He falls into a world, to an imagined universe. Because he can't face reality, he's afraid to. So he can't go through the Shar Lashem, because only tzaddikim yevoi. Only tzaddikim means people who are straight with their conscience, who have lived accordingly. So in order for a person to be able to walk through the doors and have a clear conscience, he needs to fine-tune his conscience. He needs to teach himself what is truly the real way. For most of us, our conscience has gotten so many different ideas from so many different sources that it's impossible to live according to our conscience. And this is why for 2,000 years we haven't had Nevi'im. Because our conscience has been so distorted based on beliefs of different nations and based on perceptions that are not inherently Jewish and not inherently from our Torah. And even though once we think that way, we find it within our Torah, but we can find anything within our Torah. In fact, the Torah, it tests you that way. Like it says, tzadikim ya'echibam yifashim yikash libam. That the Torah can become an obstacle. When you misunderstand life, you find the wrong things in the Torah. And then your conscience is misguided, your compass is off. And following your compass is not going to lead you anywhere. But most of our compasses are showing north in 20 different places. So you're never going to get too far with a compass like that. So therefore, ve'gisa bo yoimam ve'loila, so that you can straighten out your compass, so that you have a clear, so that your conscience at least knows what's right. So when you want to follow it, you're actually going to go somewhere. And that's the concept of learning. And that starts with what? With Yiras Hashem. When a person recognizes how important it is to live with his conscience, that he has to be straight with his conscience, so then automatically his heart won't give him rest unless he clarifies to himself what is true and what is not true. And therefore the pasuk says, Reish is Chochma, Yiras Hashem. You're not going to gain Chochma, you're not going to gain wisdom if you haven't first recognized the importance of knowing the truth, which is Yiras Hashem. You're not going to be able to enter into the doors of recognizing the truth before you don't give the truth the proper respect by realizing how real it is and how powerful it is. And then a person could go through the Sharei Tzedek, a person could come in to the Shar Lashem Tzadikim Yevoi Yevoi, and then what happens? A person that goes through the Sharei Tzedek is instantly saved. How is he instantly saved? What if he has a very difficult life and many things are happening? Because when a person is straight with his conscience, he recognizes that he shouldn't be suffering. As long as he's still in conflict with his conscience, he justifies his suffering. And when he justifies his suffering, Kiviyachol, he's giving HaKadosh Baruch Hu permission to keep hitting him. When a person is straight with his conscience, then he knows that he shouldn't be suffering. And when a person knows that he shouldn't be suffering, he opens up the door to Midas HaRachamim. And when a person opens up the door to Midas HaRachamim, he will no longer cause himself suffering regardless of the circumstances that he is involved in. He won't allow the circumstances to cause suffering to a person who doesn't deserve to suffer. So his mind, his perception, his awareness is going to change how it perceives life in order to eliminate his suffering. And therefore he says, I want to go in there. Why do I want to go in there? Because then I can start thanking. You can only thank when you're not suffering and when you recognize that you shouldn't be suffering, because then life is an experience worth having. So therefore he says, once you go through that door, where the tzaddikim, the people who are straight with their conscience, go through, then right away there's a yeshur. Right away, something inside of him is changed. He doesn't look at life the way that he did until now. He recognizes that human beings were not created to suffer. Human beings were created so that they can be that's what human beings should be doing. And that can only happen when a person identifies his true self and he recognizes who he really is. He recognizes that he is a chelek elokam imal, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this. The self that he's seeing is just an illusion. It's just a mirror that he's mirroring off of his senses. That's not the real self. But the authentic self is a chelek elokam imal. A chelek elokam imal doesn't deserve to suffer. Chelek elokam imal deserves to have what a divine being has, like they had Bizman Beis Hamikdash, like Shlomo HaMelech had. This is the type of life that a human being deserves, because this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created for us. So going into Galus means going into a place where you don't know the truth, where you have no shaykhs to the Chachma, and therefore the conscience is not clear. The conscience is not true. And even though the conscience is saying that the person deserves to suffer, maybe his conscience is off. Maybe he just hasn't learned enough. And therefore, when we look at the tree of life, we see that the Chachma is in the Tzad Yamin, and it's Goyrem Chesed. That through Chachma, Pia Pascha B'Chachma, when a person starts learning Torah al Pi Chachma, which means that he's already been through the Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem, he knows how to take life the appropriate way, then V'Torah's Chesed al Hashoyna, then he opens up to a world of Chesed. Then he realizes that all the things that he's learned, that originally he thought they're coming from the Midas Hadin, they're coming to punish him and put him in his place. No, that's not what it was all about. That's the Poshem Yikosh Libam. But Tzadikim Yelchibam, when you're straight with your conscience, everything you learn is here to help you. Everything you learn is a Midas HaChesed trying to solve your problems, not Chalila to create more problems. We have enough problems before we get to the Torah. The Torah comes to solve our problems, not to give us additional problems on top of the problems we already have. So we should all be zoiche that we should be able to open our eyes to the true Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is within us and outside of us and everywhere. We can't miss it if we look for it. And through that, we'll open the doors of Chesed, and we'll be able to be Oideka, B'vias Gal Tzedek, B'mher B'yameinu.